In this video, I will show you the effectiveness of all rifles in Warframe and highlight the ones I recommend. And when I say rifle, that includes crossbows and spear guns as well. I will make separate videos for shotguns, bows, snipers, and AoE weapons in the future. Pay attention that this video is for pre-Steel Path content, and what you unlock via Steel Path will not be present here. For example, weapon arcanes and incarnate adapters are not included here. I recommend you watch the explanation section, but if you don't want to, here are the timestamps, but don't blame me if you don't understand anything. Every test result in this video will look something like this. Here we have weapon name, headshot or body shot, and then all the active fire modes. Here are the equipped mods, and then we have this little chart that shows the kill times of each faction in each test group. And this is what each test group consists of. Then we have the consistency column, which tells us how consistent the results were. The closer to 100, the better. And if they are small numbers or in the negatives, that means that kill times are pretty inconsistent. In the bottom right, we have the level of enemies we tested against, the number of times the tests were repeated, as well as the sum, which is the addition of normal and heavy kill times of all three factions. The smaller the sum value is, the better the performance, and the minimum sum is the minimum possible sum with the current targeting delay. Standard targeting delay is 0.5 seconds, and the full test has 72 enemies, which makes the minimum sum 36 seconds. This was added to fix the false gap between auto and semi-auto weapons that happen because real players are not aimbots. This is an example of how I will show you the test results for each mastery rank. The weapons will be sorted by their sum, so the better ones are on top. The weapons I recommend will be highlighted green, and partial recommendations will be light purple. The green ones are good enough to be worth investing Catalyst and Forma in, but don't invest in the light purple ones. They are temporary weapons until you can get something better. For the early game weapons that get partial recommendations and aren't worth investing into, as a general rule of thumb, put a build like this on them. Basically just base damage, fire rate, and an elemental 90 mod. It doesn't really make much of a difference which of the 4 elements you go for, since they all perform about the same. I won't show the min-max builds for any weapons that are not highlighted, so if you want to see those, you can find them in the Discord server. Go to this channel here, then just search for the rifle's name and you'll find the build. In pursuit of fairly comparing all weapons, I decided to test all of them on equal footings against level 100 enemies. While you wouldn't really use an MR5 weapon against level 100 enemies, it is a good idea to do it this way because we can see how good a weapon can become with proper investment. And you may notice that for partial recommendations, the level of enemies in the footage I will show you will follow this chart. But this is only to prevent the footage from becoming too long and the tests stay at level 100. Let's start with Mastery Rank 0. These are the rifles you can use as soon as you start playing Warframe, and something I find hilarious is the fact that both Bratton and MK1 Bratton are credit weapons. So my question is, why is there an MK1 version when the normal version is also a credit weapon that didn't need to be crafted? So here's Burston against some level 12 enemies. It does a really impressive job for what is basically the first weapon you'll craft in Warframe. Here's the build I use, but of course it will heavily depend on what mods you have at the time. But this is a good basic build concept. In terms of test results, here's the min-maxed level 100 build, which proved that this weapon was the better choice in this mastery rank. Mastery rank 1. The only rifle in Mastery rank 1 is Karak, which as you can see doesn't perform any better than Burston, so we are going straight for Mastery rank 2. From the 3 rifles we have in this mastery rank, Higasa is a way more recent weapon and benefits from power creep that happened over the years, so it is the obvious choice. Higasa is essentially an umbrella turned into a weapon. Despite the questionable concept, the performance is quite good. When aiming, you will open the umbrella, which acts as an invincible shield that can protect you from enemies in front of you. And eating up enemy projectiles this way or killing enemies will charge up the alt fire. But be careful since you do lose your shield when using the alt fire or reloading. And here's the build I used. Mastery rank 3. Sadly, MR3 weapons are no match for Higasa, so next up, Mastery rank 4. From this batch of rifles, the one that stands out is clearly Quanta. While it may not look like much at first glance, this electricity-based double beam rifle is quite something. You can put toxin on it to make it a corrosive beast or even more electricity to enhance the small AoE effect of the electricity procs. Though, to be honest, the most fun way to use this weapon is without a doubt to simply use the alt fire and then shoot the cubes. Though don't spam it too much since you will run into ammo issues. Mastery rank 5. Here we have our first limited AoE weapon being Ignis. You can't judge limited AoE weapons by their single target performance alone. That's why Ignis gets a full recommendation. You may be confused as to why Grakata doesn't get any of the limelight. It's because in reality its performance is closer to 87 with this build, which is worse than Quanta. The build that gets a 63 uses this augment, which unless you are an aimbot doesn't perform quite as well in mission. Some people may disagree with investing in Ignis, since at Mastery rank 9 you can get Ignis Wraith, which is basically a better Ignis. But since the performance of the two is quite close and you can get this much earlier, I think it is worthy of at least some investment. But you don't have to go all the way. Ignis is quite a powerful flamethrower capable of hitting multiple enemies in a cone in front of it, and since it doesn't have a headshot multiplier, there is no need to worry about aiming for headshots. It is a good idea to put an ammo mutation mod in the exile slot, otherwise you will run out of ammo. By the way, every time you see this 50% skip enabled on a build, it means you don't need to shoot the enemies until they die, just shoot them until they are at 50% HP, then let the damage over time take care of the rest. Feel free to substitute primed cryo rounds for the non-prime version, galvanized chamber for split chamber, and galvanized aptitude for heavy caliber, as you probably don't have them at this mastery rank. Mastery rank 6. Here we have our first spear gun, and it gets a partial recommendation. There isn't that many of them overall, so might as well use one when you have the chance. Scourge is basically a corrosive staff, making it extra effective against Grenier, but the best part is the alt fire. By using the alt fire before using the main fire, you have something akin to an aimbot, which is a big help, especially since the main fire's projectiles are pretty slow. This effect also makes Scourge Nell's best friend. Mastery rank 7. As you can see, there are a lot of rifles in this rank. Of the bunch, I recommend 4 of them and give a partial recommendation to 1. Let's start with the partial recommendation. Baza is a silenced crit rifle, perfect for running missions without alerting enemies. What I like most about it is the fact that it has pretty much no recoil and great accuracy. The only downside is that the magazine is a tad too small for its fire rate. Korak Wraith is one of those weapons that no one expects to be any good, but I think they just gave up trying to farm it, since it takes quite a while to get it from invasions if you don't want to trade for it. But I say go for it, it's one of the better rifles out there. Hema is an incredible weapon. Even if it didn't do amazing damage, it would have still been a great weapon because it has 5% lifesteal on headshots. That's simply insane. Lifesteal is very hard to come by. And with Hema you'll never run out of ammo, because its ammo pool is simply your HP. Reloading costs 5%, which you will restore immediately. Have a look at this. I am at 2 HP, I will shoot at this enemy once. Yeah. It's that easy. Harpack is essentially an automatic harpoon launcher. While there is no doubt that the main reason it gets such a good performance is the exposing harpoon augment, there is something to be said about an automatic rifle that allows you to pin your enemies to walls. And don't forget to use your alt fire every 15 seconds to activate your crit chance. Soma Prime, an elegant weapon boasting massive crit chance and crit damage with a magazine that is truly impressive. It's no wonder it gets such an impressive sum. While it is in part due to the Soma Prime specific mod Hata Satya, which gives it crit chance on hit, it would have made the cut even without it. I also put stabilizer on it to make headshots easier. Feel free to substitute Hata Satya with another crit mod if you don't have it yet. And a thank you to Acroslot, which came up with the build in the public rifle testing. Mastery Rank 8. Looking at this, you may be quite baffled how I don't recommend any of the rifles in this mastery rank. Well, to put it bluntly, MR7 took all the spots and these bad boys don't even come close to beating them in any area. Initially, I was going to give a half recommendation to Fulman Semi with this build, but then I realized that this is just a worse version of Base Ignis, so I decided to throw it out the window. So nothing to see here, folks. Mastery Rank 9. With only 2 rifles at this mastery rank, there isn't much to talk about. Ignis Wraith is an easy choice since it is just a better version of Ignis. Ignis Wraith is one of those weapons that you can find in nearly any player's inventory. It is a popular choice since not only does heat damage scale nicely late game, but also because this rifle boasts an amazing ammo economy, boosting its limited AoE capabilities to the absolute max. Mastery Rank 10. We have lots of options in this rank. Zenith and Baza are no-brainers, but the reason Badacore is chosen and Tenora isn't is the fact that Tenora has that annoying spool up while Badacore has no such handicap, and also has the advantage of an explosive altfire that doesn't consume any ammo. Badacore. I am tempted to say it's the perfect weapon. A magnetic base element, good fire rate and a large magazine, not to mention that incredible altfire which you can use without a stupid mode switching delay. Ambassador. It's hilarious because despite being in the game before Ambassador, this is in all ways superior to it, and you don't even have to go through hell to farm it like Ambi. On a fun note, does anyone remember when this weapon was bugged and you could spam the altfire without having to charge it again? That was a fun time. Baza Prime is here for revenge after I denied the base version a full recommendation. While the main difference between the two is better ammo economy and higher status chance, those two alone were the only weak points of this weapon. So yeah, Baza Prime is one juicy rifle. Do not sleep on it. Zenith is one of those weapons that realistically you are not getting at this mastery rank since you get it via the login system, but regardless of it being MR10 or MR20, it maintains its status as a recommended weapon. Particularly, the semi-auto mode is the one I recommend modding this weapon for. Having infinite punch through is a nice little perk on the side. The main sell is the amazing performance. Looking at this build, you may see that it uses galvanized crosshair, which I am not a fan of. But if I banned it, the next best was Argon Scope, and there is no doubt that it is at least better than Argon Scope. Amprex is one of those weapons that never gets old. Can you believe this weapon is over 10 years old, and yet it is still one of the best rifles in the game? The only complaint I have is that there are so many numbers that they completely block my view of the enemies. But I guess it's pretty hard to complain about doing too many instances of damage when that's in fact a good thing. This is the normal single target test result, and this is for the link chain enabled test. The difference sure is huge, isn't it? Mastery Rank 11. Considering the 55 that Zenith got last rank, you may think of these two as weak choices, but remember that Zenith isn't realistically obtainable at MR10, and when you exclude it, the next best is 62 of Baza Prime, which both of these weapons easily beat. Synapse is one of my favorite weapons. That's mostly because it can stack viral and corrosive, which normally can't be done. Having that on top of good ammo economy and an insane passive that boosts the headshot damage is a surefire way to get yourself an amazing weapon. Prisma Grakata is a weapon with two different build styles. You could go down the consistent and easy to use path, or you could use the alternative, which basically forces you to be incredibly accurate. To a crazy degree in fact, but as long as you are close to an aimbot, you will never have to reload, which is crazy. Mastery Rank 12. We do have a good number of rifles in this mastery rank, but I only recommend one of them since the majority are not up to par with what I already recommended. I did say only one, but it is more of a 2-in-1 deal, so let's talk about them separately. AX52 Hipfire mode gives you a good chunk of ammo efficiency and more than doubles the magazine. This gives the weapon an incredibly good usability and ammo economy, making it a very good choice when trying to mow down hordes of enemies. You didn't hear this from me, but if you add an ammo efficiency arcane, you can full on Rambo with this and never have to reload, which is a fun time. AX52 aimed mode incentivizes you to go for headshots by giving you a massive 400% crit chance. That's basically like having 2 crit delays on, which also don't use any mod slots. So yeah, that is a big deal. If you are confident in your aim, you can drop crit mods completely, but not doing so gives you the flexibility to easily switch between the two modes of this weapon, which I think is a better deal overall, since at the end of the day, Warframe is a horde shooter. Mastery Rank 13. This is the mastery rank where we go from pretty dang powerful weapons to weapons that start to defy all laws of nature and are pretty much demonic amalgamations that feel illegal to use. Trumna is essentially what happens when you try to use an anti-air defense system as a rifle. It's big, it's devastating, and it is highly explosive. The main fire is what sells the weapon, and the alt fire that you can use once every 5 kills is just a little sprinkle on top to seal the deal. Highly recommended. Mastery Rank 14. We have entered the highest echelon of weapon performance. From here on out, having a higher mastery rank requirement does not correlate with better performance by default anymore. It just doesn't get better than this. Tenora Prime is a somewhat generic hit-scan rifle with good performance, but on a more fun note, what baffles me is that they nerfed this thing's alt fire when compared to base Tenora by massively reducing its fire rate, which makes zero sense. To the point that base Tenora's semi-mode actually performs better than the Prime variants. I am speechless. Supra Vandal is a weapon that, despite looking very similar to most other good rifles, is somehow very different without even having a gimmick. And that mostly happens because instead of being hit scan, it has somewhat slow projectiles, but to balance it out, it has a significantly bigger magazine, and that makes it fun to use. Kuva Prime is honestly a breath of fresh air. Most basic rifles with decent performance are basically the exact same weapon, just reskinned. A bit of crit, a bit of status, decent uptime for the magazine, and done, you made 90% of good rifles. But this one works quite a bit differently. To get good crits, you only need status chance, which means you can give up on the crit chance mods entirely and focus just on status chance and crit damage. Such a fun concept. I had a lot of fun trying to min-max this weapon since it has so many unique build routes. Reconifix. When I first used this weapon, I immediately thought that because the reload bonus is so easy to get, it must have been balanced and made a lot weaker. But oh boy was I wrong. I was dead wrong. The bonus you get by using perfect reloads is borderline unbelievable. It gives you 25% final damage and guaranteed heat procs. If you didn't know, heat procs stack infinitely and refresh their own durations, so this effect has insane scaling. Fenmore. It may be completely unfair to compare any other rifle to this since this is an Incarnon weapon, but it is unavoidable because you can get this weapon before unlocking Steel Path while the other Incarnon rifles are only obtainable afterwards. There really isn't much to say other than it doesn't get any better than this in terms of single target performance. Oh, and the evolution perks are left to right in order, so a 1 is the left perk and a 3 is the right perk. Basically this. Mastery Rank 15. There's only one weapon here, but that's all you need since it is just that powerful. Trumna Prime is what happens when you try to make a Prime version of a weapon that was already in the top 5 most powerful rifles. They only gave it a small increase in performance, but given how much it already had, I am honestly surprised they even made a Prime version. But yeah, the better ammo economy is definitely welcome. Mastery Rank 17. From this point on, the weapons will have progenitor bonuses, so pay attention to the percentage and element type that I will put on the bottom right at the start. And try focusing on the test results rather than the footage, since not all weapons have the correct element or the highest damage bonus. Coda HEMA. There are few rifles with such a wide power gap between their variants, especially considering how base HEMA wasn't even a weak weapon to begin with. They basically gave this thing double the crit chance and double the total base damage, which is pretty much insane. I have two builds for this weapon. The first is for the Toxin variant, and if you have any other variant, use the second build instead. This is a common thing for such weapons, so I won't point it out again. Coda Synapse. Using this weapon against level 100 enemies honestly makes me feel bad. This thing does so much damage that you could double the level of enemies and barely notice a difference in performance. And just like base Synapse, we have that 20% extra headshot damage, which is the definition of overkill. Kuva and Tenet. These rifles are somewhat outside the mastery ranks. You can get them as early as MR5 if someone carried you the whole way through, but that's not a good idea, and I would say about MR8 to 10 is where you'll get your first one. I wanted to only recommend Glaxion, Ferox and Tetra, but I think it is best to show you all of them since people will get really mad at me otherwise. Kuva Cortac Auto. This is when you start shooting without aiming. You can still aim, but only after you start shooting, otherwise you would use the semi mode. This is the weakest rifle fire mode among the progenitor rifles, but despite that, at MR10, it would still be among the most powerful rifles you can get your hands on, so don't underestimate it. Kuva Hind Semi. This is what you get when you sacrifice fire rate and magazine size for crit chance. It is slower and less useful against hordes, but it does deal big damage every hit. And using stabilizer on this weapon is a must since the recoil is quite annoying. Kuva Hind Auto. This is the opposite of the semi mode. It's all about dealing with hordes and having high status chance. This is perfect for dealing with lots of weaker enemies instead of a few strong enemies. I recommend using stabilizer on this too. Tenet Flux Rifle. I was quite surprised to see that Flux Overdrive wasn't in the top build, but I am guessing the level of enemies was too low for that kind of build. Though I am still disappointed that this weapon doesn't share the beam weapon characteristics like base Flux. It would have been a blast to have multi-shot DOT multiplication, but alas. Kuva Korak is one of those weapons with a generic name and looks. You would have never guessed it to be powerful if you didn't see it firsthand, but somehow, here we are! Kuva Korak is a worthy weapon even if it is the definition of a generic rifle. Kuva Chakra. If you want a one-hit kill weapon, then this is the weapon for you. It is extremely powerful when going against a few powerful enemies. The 50% extra headshot damage is quite something, but it definitely isn't a weapon for horde killing, since if you don't headshot every time, the performance jumps off a cliff. Kuva Cortac Semi. This is when you aim first and then start shooting. It has less fire rate but higher crit stats and shoots 4 shots at once. It definitely needs stabilizer in the build, but that being said, you shouldn't stick to one or the other when it comes to Cortac. Use both fire modes as the situation calls for it. My choice would be modding for Semi as the main since it's more powerful. Kuva Hind Burst. It has both high status like Auto and high crit like Semi, making it the best of both worlds. But you need to realize that this has a burst of 5, meaning you'll miss a lot of shots on weaker enemies, which is the reason it has such good stats. And don't forget stabilizer, so all the shots in a burst can stay as headshots. Tenet Tetra. One would think that this weapon wouldn't perform as well since its fire rate is so much slower than the competition, but having better stats than Hind's burst mode and twice the base damage sure makes up for it. The alt-fire is also a nice perk, but it's a shame that they changed it so its damage scales off of ammo left in the magazine. And don't forget to equip terminal velocity for projectile speed. Tenet Ferox. Sadly, mine is at a really low percentage since this weapon is incredibly annoying to max, but there is no denying that it's a powerhouse. And that's before talking about the alt-fire, which is pretty much god tier given how long it lasts. But sadly, most people that try it can't see the incredible performance since the visual effects take their eyesight. Seriously, that's the only reason I don't use this weapon. Look at this. Tenet Glaxion. Among the progenitor weapons, this is by far my favorite. It is literally Amprex 2.0, and before SP, this is the best of the link chain rifles, so definitely give it a try. With this, it has been proven that corpus engineering is unrivaled. That's why the Grineer never even tried to make a primary link chain weapon. You can find this entire list in the linked Google Doc, and once again, if you want to see the build for a specific weapon, you can find it in the Discord server in the Rifles Level 100 channel. Just search for the weapon name since they do get hidden over time. And yeah, that's all I had for today. I will see you next time, and bye bye!